Young women have been growing up with an indoctrination of what womanhood is and what it should be. They've been taught everything that is in direct opposition to the Word of God. Young women who want to be different from the world are rare, but they are real. On this Rare But Real podcast, Audrey Broggie will often be joined by her daughter, GraceAnna, and her daughters-in-law, Maureen, Kesset, and Marilyn, who desire to be discerning in a day when everything seems to go against God's design. Join them in the journey of becoming rare but real. It takes courage and conviction. And now, Audrey Broggie.
Hey there. I'm so glad to be with y'all again today for this podcast. And on this particular day, I'm joined by my daughter, GraceAnna, and we had a conversation earlier in the week when we were talking about her oldest girl, Audrey Kate, who wanted to earn money for a trip they're going to take, and or actually wanted some spending money for the trip. So they talked about ways that she could earn some money, and so she could have some for the trip. And I don't know, as GraceAnna and I were talking about it, I thought to myself, this would be a great topic to talk about on our podcast, especially because as we were talking, we were talking about how when my children were growing up, all the ways that Carl and I tried to teach them about the work ethic, and so that they wouldn't grow up and be lazy people, lazy adults who expected handouts or didn't know how to work hard. And we wanted them to understand what the Bible taught about that. And I've always thought about the passage in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, and the scripture says, "For even when we were with you, we used to give you this order: if anyone is not willing to work, then he is not to eat either." And I remember there were some different times when my children were growing up, and GraceAnna, you may remember this, I put that on the refrigerator.
Oh, yeah.
I put the verse that don't eat, or I just did the verse and put it on the refrigerator because of reminding y'all about chores and teaching you about chores. And one of the things that, when y'all were growing up, we had Saturday chore day, and that was the day you couldn't do anything fun until you got the chores done. And y'all, and I know I've heard you say, the things you hear your adult children say, but I remember I've heard you say on different occasions, like Sunday was like the favorite day of the week. Saturdays, mornings, that was chore day. But Saturday afternoon, when the chores were done, it was great. But, sometimes we would have that child who would take all day long to do their chores. And so Saturday wasn't as fun as it could have been because of that, but it was. And one of the things about that, the chore day on Saturday, is because I wanted y'all to understand, me being the manager of the home in terms of being the worker at home, not that, and Carl does plenty of stuff, so I'm not talking about that, but I wanted y'all to understand that 7 people get the bathrooms dirty. 7 people dirty up the kitchen. 7 people bring in dirt into the house. And I had this rule that said, we do not create unnecessary work for others. I had all those little sayings that I had in the kitchen, and I remember that was one of them. And if you're creating unnecessary work, then you got to clean it up. And so anyway, all that being said, I just thought, especially since you're right now in the middle of these years, your children are ages 2 up to 10, almost 11, and the ways you are teaching them how to work and to earn some extra money. And maybe you want to expound a little bit about what you're doing with Audrey Kate, even as she was expressing that recently.
Yes, absolutely. And Mom, it does make me laugh thinking back on those Saturdays, because it was my least favorite day of the week growing up, because I shared a bathroom with 4 boys. And typically, I was the one cleaning that bathroom on Saturday. And I don't know if you remember that I wrote a poem about my desperate situation of having to clean the bathroom.
Didn't you do it with Christy?
I did it with my cousin, yes. And it was, "Oh, whatever shall we do? We have to clean the fungus residue." That was the first line of the poem. But I am just so incredibly grateful when I think about all the things that you and Dad taught us. I think that teaching us how to work hard with whatever was in front of us and the work God had called us to is something that I am just so grateful for, because I really do see that it's something that is really has to be caught and taught. It's it's like an innate characteristic. And I don't mean innate like we're born knowing how to do it, but like, I do think the benefit of being trained to work hard is so helpful for me now in my life that it's not something that, yes, I could read a book about it and I'm sure it would be incredibly helpful, but it's something that now I just do instinctively. So, and I'm not saying that for anyone to think that I am not lazy because I definitely am, but I'm just saying I am also thankful just for learning that as a child.
Yeah.
I know I'm going all over the place,
No,
but I was
okay.
recently reading a book called Teach Them to Work, which, by the way, it's a great book.
Teach Them to Work?
Teach Them to Work by Mary Beakey.
Okay.
But my kids would, every time they would see me reading that book, they would say, is that the book that you're reading to make us slaves? But that being said, just kind of getting back to Audrey Kate and just helping her learn to just contribute to the family, it kind of brought about because Grant and I went on a date last week and somehow we were talking about, I don't even know how the conversation got here, but we were talking about how families used to have a lot more children and how, it used to be, Grant was telling me this, society used to be more of an agrarian culture where families grew up on farms and then the children would really learn to contribute to the family's needs and income and help the family. Whereas now our culture is more of a capitalistic culture. So you're thinking about, the parents have this huge financial responsibility, basically paying for everything for their children. And I'm saying they don't have to have that. I'm just saying that's just the way our culture is more operating. So we were having a conversation about that. And then Audrey Kate came to me later in the week and wanted to earn some money, to have some spending money for a trip she's going to be going on. And I just started that conversation that I'd have with Grant made me think, okay, instead of me just paying her money, like having her do a chore and paying her money, how can she actually help our family, like bring in some income for our family? And so we talked about that. And I just told her, we've got several boxes of clothes. Some of them, they're gently used or things that you've worn. And I have like a little consignment group on Facebook that I've had for a while. And I said, why don't you can list these clothes, I'll help you sell them, and you can make some money. And it ended up just being a great thing for her. And it was also great for me because I had been meaning to get to those boxes for ages in terms of organizing. And it was just kind of a neat, very freeing experience of kind of seeing some of the years of just, her, I guess, really learning like what it looks like to give back to the family and for her to learn how to make that money. And it was really sweet. It was really, really great.
Well, and for her to do the work, to know what goes into it. It's not just like money appears, but something has to be done to earn the money. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, she worked really hard and spent, hours doing it.
Yeah.
And so, it was great. And it ended up opening the door for Evangeline wanting to do some special work. And I actually ended up paying her for some of her work, but she wanted to organize the garage. And she had heard me talk about, I wanted to get down there and organize that garage. Like I kept saying, I want to organize these shelves. She said, Mom, will you let me do that? And I mean, she did a better job than I would have. And she's 9. And just in terms of, she even like laid a little carpet down there and made a sign and all of that. But it was really neat. I think the thing that was just encouraging for me is for so long, I've been trying to teach my children these things of, working hard and really to be able to begin to see the fruit of that and to just see that I don't actually have to do everything now, but seeing them really contribute was really, really great. So, and of course, like the boys as well, I mean, they're still more in the mode of we're just working on their chores.
Sure.
Charles wanted to know if I would pay him to clean his room. And I said, no, sorry.
Well, there are the things that you don't pay children for. That's just, no, you're part of the family and that's just something you do. But then there's the extra above and beyond that you can pay them for. Will you pay me for brushing my teeth?
But I mean, now I think back as I was kind of in learning and working with the kids, I think back on growing up, and I was thinking about this today, how when we would do different things to earn money, you know, growing up, and I was thinking about when we would pick up pecans in our yard, and how I would pick up that huge bucket just for one Twix bar that y'all brought me.
But it was motivating since because you never got candy to speak of.
I know. But now I'm like, wow. Like, But I mean, I'm so like, I'm thankful for that because it really, I just remember being on my hands and knees, like picking up all the, you know, all those nuts thinking I am going to get a Twix bar.
It's the reward at the end of it. Well, you know, and I think about, you probably remember when you and Jordan organized our laundry room. I don't know if you remember that. That was
I forgot about that.
Yeah, y'all did it because I've always called that with our old laundry room like it's like a garage without a car and a laundry room. But it would raising, you know, our family as big as it was, and especially with 4 boys, and then Carl having all of so many tools in there and everything. And it would just easily become like, okay, if someone's coming over, that door has to be closed and it has to be bolted. I don't want anybody. I used to say to some of my friends, if you go in my laundry room, I'll kill you. So, but I remember y'all, you know, that was one of the chores you could do that I could, you know, you could earn some money for, but get it done. And y'all did a great job because you owned it. You decided to own it. And I remember too, that y'all labeled it and did all that stuff. But it also makes me think about when Jeremy and Jordan were little, and we lived in Texas in a neighborhood with a lot of houses, and they wanted to earn money, and so I made cookies and let them sell them to the neighbors. And as they started doing that, I made the cookies and they sold them. But then as more our neighbors wanted to support them and all that, and then as they started doing it more and more, even so much that some of our neighbors would order cookies for things that they were going to do. But then we started teaching them about, okay, now you got to set aside some of the money that you're earning for ingredients. You know, that there's something that goes into this. I would still bake them because, you know, I wanted to make sure that was done, but to help them learn that there's overhead to a little business and that kind of stuff, and knowing that, you know, it taught them so much. And then y'all did that even when we moved here. Sometimes y'all sold cookies, all of you did, in the neighborhood. And it was just another way to teach children as they're growing up to earn money and to work, you know, to be a salesperson, to go out and sell the cookies and do the work, not just, okay, I'm going to just give you money. I'm just going to give you an allowance, and I'm just going to give you spending money. And then children don't learn how to work, that work equals pay, rather than I'm just going to sit around, and then when I need to go somewhere, mom and dad will bankroll it. So I think that's wonderful, you know, and hearing, you know, of her doing the work and then taking pride in that, because there's a lot of personal, I don't mean pride in the negative sense of the word, I mean it in the positive sense, personal pride that I worked hard and now I'm getting paid for the work that I did. So that was super positive. Well, talk a little bit about that book. What are the book that you read? Because I have not read that one, or I didn't read that. Now, I read some other books when y'all were growing up about ways to I'm trying to remember one of them because it was a yellow book, and I can't remember what the title was, but I remember when it was the same thing when y'all would see it laying around. You'd be like, don't read that.
Well, to be completely honest, I have not finished the book because I would sit down to read the book and I would usually like see something that needed to be picked up. Like I'd be sitting down reading and I'd see dust under the couch. And, you know, all of that stuff. But I do remember one of the things that she said in the book, which really is kind of what I mentioned at the beginning, is that you really teach your children by your own, like, actions in life before God, that work is not a bad thing, but that it is what God has called us to. You know, as we know in Genesis, that work was not part of the curse.
That's right.
That God called Adam to work and keep the garden before the curse happen. And so she talks about a lot and about that, and then just like specific, just a lot of helpful tips, throughout the book on how to make that happen. But, one of the things that I've just thought a lot about is just my desire myself to be faithful, to the work that God has called me to. And I think so much in our culture is about, what are you going to be? Like, are you going to be famous? Like, what are you going to be known for? And really what I want to be most of all as a wife and as a mother, is just to be faithful in the work God has called me to, whether that is, cleaning out a closet or, whatever it is. And that's what I know that me being faithful is something that, my children are going to see.
Right.
And so I can't really pass down to them this whole, notion of work and how to do it joyfully before the Lord and in every task, if that's not something that I've really grasped myself.
Right.
And I think that, Mom, one of the things that you taught me so well was just that God sees, everything. And so I remember, especially when the kids were really young and, I was home with them every day, and no one, sees the work that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just thinking, like, God sees me cleaning this toilet, and this brings him glory.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been kind of, my prayers. I think about being faithful myself, is that my kids, whatever the work God calls them to do, it may be a lot of different things, that they would strive to be faithful and to glorify him.
Right.
In all things.
Right. Well, I love what you said too about the book you're reading, and that the author reminded the reader about how work was before sin entered the world, that's part, and that's what God did. He worked in creation, and then on the seventh day he rested from his work, not because he was tired, but that, and even in Psalm 8, when the scripture says, when I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have ordained, when you think about, that's what God did. He's done his work in the world. He created the world, he created us, and work is a good thing. It's meant to be a good thing. The only thing that happened after man and woman sinned is then there's frustrating work, and that's what we associate with work now, the frustrating part of it, rather than, no, I was made to work and I should be working. That, and even in Titus chapter 2, when we see one of the things about women is she's to be a worker at home, and when you see Proverbs 31, you see this woman is industrious. She works hard. She puts her hand to the distaff, and she does things because she knows that God has given her a work to do. And so that's why it's so important, like, to teach our children those things as they are growing up, that work is a good thing. It's a positive thing. And then also when you teach them from Proverbs about what God says about laziness, about not working. And we certainly don't want for our children to be parasites. That's the thing when you and Grant were talking about that in terms of, there used to be a time when children a lot of people saw them as blessings, even more so because they were a needed part of the family to get things done. And then with our society, they still are a needed part of the family. It's just that moms and dads have to think about it in a different way, because we don't need to, when people talk about, oh, they're so expensive. Well, that's because you're thinking that you're having like a little plaything that you're supposed to cater to, rather than a human being that you are supposed to mold and shape and give that they would be an asset to the community, the asset to the church, asset to the world around them, that they would be giving back, not taking in all the time. And I think somehow we've lost that in the day and age in which we live, where we just think we're supposed to cater to our children, give them everything they want, and give them this magical childhood where and when I say that, I'm not talking about not giving them a happy childhood. I'm talking about where we think we're supposed to shower them with everything under the sun, rather than teaching them work is what we should teach you how to work, and then you'll be most fulfilled and most blessed when you learn how to do that, and then see the other things as blessings that are on top of that. It's a blessing to work. I mean, such a blessing.
It's so true. And I mean, we obviously have been so blessed, like in our culture, to have just so often the work to be easier, and I think about that chapter in Colossians. I think it's Colossians 3, but it's the section to bond service.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about that, I'm just going to turn there real quick, but it says here,
I'm doing it too.
It's verse 22, it says, bond servants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in sincerity of heart, fearing God. And whatever you do, do it heartily, as to the Lord, not to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ. And I just think about if this was applicable, to slaves, how much more so to us of, doing our work for the Lord, and having that joy in it, because we know that we have not only the inheritance one day with Christ, but all the blessings that we have now, and knowing that it makes an eternal difference. And so it is just encouraging to think about our work that we can have on a daily basis, even as mothers, as I'm thinking mostly mothers would be listening to this particular one, or perhaps women who desire to be mothers, that we can have joy in our work. And I think sadly, Mom, this is kind of lost a lot of times, because women, I think, do get so caught up in the difficulties of raising children,
right,
that sometimes that joy is lost. And I mean, I'm so thankful that my memories of you, and I think about Grandma, was just a very joyful spirit going about y'all's work. And I think that that's something that I pray that the Lord will continue to do in me, that I can be that example to my children of, yes, work's going to be hard, and sometimes we need to leave the work and just rest. But that we can be joyful in it because we're doing it for God.
That's right. That's right. And it's I was thinking about that passage you were reading, in Colossians, it's because God's teaching us that our work is not just work. It's not just some mundane thing. It's a spiritual duty. It's something we do for the Lord. We're serving Him, and so He wants us to serve Him well, not only with what we actually do, but with our attitude and with our diligence towards doing it. And so anything that we do, it's a spiritual thing. I mean, we think, I'm just washing dishes and I'm just vacuuming. I'm just, instructing my kids with these verbs and, trying to help them learn this next lesson but all of that, when it's given to the Lord, is service to the Lord. It's not something that, that's just where we live and breathe. And that's how we learn that's how we just learn how to serve God with a heart that wants to be pleasing to Him. And of course, when we do that, then our children learn that from us. They learn how we view it. They learn that we see our work as just as important as the work that the President of the United States does, or that, some really important person, they're doing important work. Yeah, they are, but so are we. It's So, and it's kind of I mean, God is so I don't know, He just gets to the crux of it. He gets to the heart of it. And so often, the things we learn in those mundane things. I think about it, GraceAnna, sometimes because the way I grew up, and I grew up on a farm, and when I was 5 years old, I was out at the tobacco barn. Now, this is not a statement on tobacco. I'm just saying I was out at the tobacco barn. I mean, just what was my life? Picking up leaves. I mean, my parents had, I was working at 5 years old in slimy, nasty tobacco, but the family, we were doing that in the summer because that's just what we did. And it wasn't she's only 5, she shouldn't be doing this. No, I was out there with the family, and I was doing work appropriate for my age, but in terms of, I wasn't hanging the sticks in the barn, you know what I mean? I was just doing the things. And that's the same thing, as you're teaching Patrick, he's 2.5 years old. So you're giving him work that's appropriate for his age, and teaching, and then you teach him with that. And then you're giving Charles work that's appropriate for his age. So talk a little bit about that, how God's helped you with those kinds of things. Because now Audrey Kay, obviously she's at the age where, she can list things, she can consign things because she's at a different stage. but then there's work that you give your little children. And sometimes, how as moms it's easier. Well, I'll just do it myself because it's easier. But then we're missing something important to teach our children. So you're in the middle of it.
Yeah. I mean, Patrick's 2.5. So for him right now, the main chores I give him is he's like our little errand boy. But I really will sometimes be like, now, Patrick, I want you to go put this up. And I'll hand him something. Now, the funny thing about that is sometimes I'll find like a toy in the refrigerator or, he's put it in the wrong spot. But, I give him little jobs. Yeah, he tries. I give him little jobs of things that he needs to pick up and that he needs to do, as well as, getting on the floor with him and showing him how to do that.
Right.
Charles, one of his big chores right now, he's just turned 7, but it's the trash. So he takes out the bags of trash for me and puts them in the barrel. And then one thing recently that I had all the older kids ended up doing was the raccoons had gotten into our trash.
Oh, yeah.
And had gotten, I remember we had this, I talked to you the day this happened, but they had gotten into some dirty trash and it was all over the yard and it was just really, really gross.
You're talking about the raccoons.
Yeah, the raccoons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Had gotten into it and just, it was gross. Like they had made the trash even worse than it was before. And I was just going out to clean it up. And I thought, you know what, I should probably get the kids out to help me. Not because I was like, I'm going to teach them a lesson, but I really did think like this is good for them as well to learn what this is like. And so with the girls, especially because Charles, I think he's naturally, I've told him, you need to be tough. You don't need to be scared and scream when there's a bug. Like you need to be tough. So he doesn't struggle with that as much. But with the girls, I was just saying, you're as, Lord willing, a manager of your home one day, you're going to have to do stuff that's just kind of yucky. And I told him the story about me having to put my hand down the sink, down the garbage disposal and have to get stuff out of there. And anyway, I was just saying, look, Mom does not enjoy this job at all, but it's work we have to do. So we're going to do it and we're going to be tough about it. And so we all went out there and we got like plastic bags and we picked up all the old food and threw it in the barrel. But that was one of those things where thankfully I just thought, I should get the kids to help me. And it was a great story for Grant because they got to talk to Daddy about how they did that so that he didn't have to do that when he got home.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
But I am trying to do that more of incorporating them. And honestly, Mom, sometimes I wish I knew what more women did. Like, I think I would love to know, and hopefully this is helpful, for people listening, but I would love to know, like, what do other women do? What are ways that they, are teaching their children to do things? But the main thing that I'm trying to do is to get them to help me. And I think, too, it just, for me, it makes being home so much more enjoyable because we're in it together. It's not just that I'm running around trying to clean up after everyone all day, every day.
Right.
But we're making our home together. I mean, another thing is I'll have them fold laundry while I read aloud to them. Yeah. Or try to, do things to make their work fun. I let the girls listen to music while they clean their room.
Right.
Things like that. Charles also folds clothes, not necessarily the best ever, but does that and puts them away. So, we're learning and it's fun to see them also feeling that satisfaction from completing their chores and working hard and contributing to the family. So,
well, speaking of wanting to hear what other mothers do and stuff, I will get your sisters-in-law and I'll discuss this with them as well.
Yes.
Because, I know with both of them, I know they've done a lot in this same area of trying to help their children work and be to do things in, whether it's the house, taking care of the house or whether it's taking care of the yard, or whatever it is. And, or even helping neighbors and doing work for neighbors. There's always that kind of stuff too, but it's so important for us to do that and to help our children in that way. Again, because we don't want them to be, parasites. We want them to know that, they're supposed, think about it. It is kind of pathetic if a 10-year-old can't clear the dishes. or they can't, they don't, they're just like, no, I'm not doing that. Or they just think, oh, mom has to do that all the time, or help with, just like with you saying, hey kids, I need you to come out here and help me clean up this mess that the raccoons made. I mean, that's so important for kids to be doing that somebody's doing these things, and even if you have sometimes someone who comes in and helps do the housework or whatever, for them to value that kind of stuff, that the helping professions and people who do this for a living, that it's not just something, oh, I don't have to do that, but I need to know how to do it. So that's so important. And I don't know why you were talking. It made me think of, Jameson, when he'll make a joke and say, I just know sometimes if I was sitting there and I would say, Mom, can you get me so-and-so? And he was talking about when we're eating or whatever. And I would say, you've got legs.
Yep.
You've got legs. I don't know why that came to my mind.
Well, there is that thing too of like thinking through, like, yes, I absolutely want to serve my children in special times when I will get up and do things for them. But if it's something, I've told my kids, if it's something that you can do, then you don't need to ask anybody else to do it for you.
Well, and then say, and if they're capable, like, and if they say, oh, I need some more milk. Does anyone else need me to get them anything? Sometimes to offer that. All of it is, there's so many things like that, instead of just my little snark, you got legs.
But, Proverbs has quite a bit of that kind of stuff in it.
Absolutely.
As well. I mean, the proverb about, the sluggard, he's too lazy. Remember the one you taught us about, he's too lazy, he can't even bring his hand back from the dish. From the dish. So I think like that, those are so great, just to be, if you're just even thinking like, where do I even start? Is just start in the Proverbs and then just applying it, to life with your kids. It's an easy place to start.
Well, it really is, because it's you saying that reminds me of the one. It's like, there's a lion in the street. I can't go out there. Like making I'm trying to see if I can find it here in Proverbs, because it's like all the passages about the sluggard. Proverbs 26:15 is, the sluggard buries his hand in the dish. He is weary of bringing it to his mouth again, and then. He won't do that. But I'm trying to find the one. Let me turn here about the lion in the street. That's the one that always makes me laugh. Even now, it makes me laugh. Oh yeah, it's Proverbs 22:13. The sluggard says, "There is a lion outside. I shall be slain in the streets." And it's like, it's an excuse, because. It's like, it would be like a child saying, I can't pull those weeds. The bugs are too bad. I'll get eaten alive by the bugs. It's like finding an excuse that I can't do that. I can't do it because this will happen to me. And it's like, instead of teaching our children, the bugs are bad, but let's put some bug spray on you. You're still going to pull the weeds because the weeds have to be pulled, or teaching just the basic stuff that this has to be done. It's part of, again, being a needed part of the family, and these things must be done. But you're right. You're so right about Proverbs, and that's another reminder about helping families read it every day, because not only will you get wisdom about so many things, but you'll get wisdom about work and laziness and all those kinds of things. So,
and I think too, even how you responded, like even with that, how you gave that example of kind of taking the negative response and then having a positive spin on that situation of realizing that part of our job is our children are going to have negative responses at times to work, and just like we do. And so teaching them like, okay, yes, you may not feel like doing this, but this is what we need to do. And it's okay. Sometimes knowing that it's actually okay that you don't feel like doing this, but we're going to do it anyway. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that point, because that's great. You're right. But go ahead, because I think I didn't mean to cut you off. No, that I was just thinking about that, of just like that. I think that going back to just it really, I do feel that at the end of the day, I have to test myself of, am I walking in joy? Am I able to be that example to my children of, you know what, like we do have to do work, but God's called us to it, and He's given us the strength to do it. And yes, I know you don't feel like doing this right now, but you need to, and I know you can, and then encouraging them, when that work is done. But I think just, just like praying that most of all that I would be modeling that to my children well, and that it's not just like, oh, mommy's so busy and so exhausted and so tired, all the time, but joyful that God has given me something to do with my life that matters.
Yeah, and that we have the physical bodies to do it,
I know.
Just that we have the strength. And, one of the lessons that my mom, it's the one you've heard, I've shared it with you so many times, but I remember I must have been about 7 years old, and my mom, my sister and I shared this little closet, and she gave me the job of cleaning it out. And I did not want to clean that closet out. And I thought it's not fair because it's my sister and me. And she should have to help me. But my mom said, no, you're doing it. And I remember, she put a stool in there so that I could reach the higher shelves and all that. And I remember being so angry that I had to clean that closet. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to clean this closet. And I started yelling and I was crying. And my mother said, Audrey, you can yell and cry all you want, but you're going to clean it. And she closed the door to the bedroom so she wouldn't have to hear it. And I just screamed louder. And then she came in because I thought, oh, she's going to relieve me. She's going to realize how this is terrible for me. But she came in and she just said, you need to clean this closet out. And if you want to scream and yell, that's fine. But I'm just telling you, you're going to get a headache and you're still going to have to clean out the closet. And with that, she left. And I remember thinking, so I was just so upset over it, but I cleaned out the closet and I got a headache. And I just remember that it was just like my mom did not give in to me because she knew that I needed to obey and I needed to learn to work and I needed to finish a job and that I didn't like doing. And, and I've never forgotten it. I've never forgotten that lesson. And I
know. And I remember you told me the same thing when I sat in my closet crying that it was too messy and that I could not clean it up. Yeah. And I have said it often to my girls now, who somehow seem to have as messy of a closet as I did growing up.
Well, and it's just and we have to know, we need the Lord. We need to walk with Him so we know how to respond to our children and that we need to be firm with them and keep their feet to the task and not give in to them and I don't feel like doing it. And they're whining and complaining because it's true. Just what you said a second ago, our natural default is to whine and complain about anything that we have to do that we don't want to do. So we have to help our children with that. And then God has to help us do our job heartily as unto the Lord and not just as men pleasers, but that our children see us not always complaining about the work that He's called us to do, because sometimes that's what they pick up. And so we have to discipline ourselves in that as well. So anything else to share about that?
I think that's great, Mom. So I just enjoyed reminiscing a little bit. And I think just praying that all of us would just really seek to live out what God has called us to. And I think about that passage, 1 Thessalonians 4:11, which says that you aspire to lead a quiet life, mind your own business, and to work with your hands as we commune with you, that you may walk properly toward those who are outside. And just, that small prayer as well, that I would just, be faithful to the work God has called me to.
And I think that is a perfect passage to end this podcast. Thank you, GraceAnna, for joining me today. And we'll get your sisters-in-law on here before too long. Okay.
Sounds good.
If you enjoyed this episode of Rare But Real, be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified when a new episode is posted. And share this podcast with friends. Follow Audrey on Instagram and Facebook at Mothering from the Heart. And listen to all her messages on the Search the Scriptures app.